Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. Early in the morning, just as day is dawning, he picks up all the post bags in his van. Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. All the birds are singing, and the day is just beginning. Pat feels he's a really happy man.
Postman Pat and the Hole in the Road. It was a fine day in Greendale. Pat was on his way with his van full of letters and parcels for the village and for the farms and cottages scattered all along the valley. Down at Greendale Village School, they had made a model volcano. "Just think, children," said Mr. Pringle, "of all that hot rock going bubble, bubble, whoosh under the ground."
"You'd get your feet hot," said Katie. "No, you wouldn't," said Bill Thompson, sploshing away at his volcano painting. "You could wear your wellies."
"It was a long time before wellies were invented," said Mr. Pringle. "The volcanoes made our lovely Greendale hills long before there were any people, never mind wellies. Great holes in the ground, with rock oozing out like toffee."
"Did you say toffee?" said Tom. "I like toffee."
"I said the rock was like toffee," said Mr. Pringle, "because it was all oozy, and it was so long ago that it was even before the dinosaurs came. You can all do a lovely painting tomorrow for open day, but it's home time now."
"What if," said Julian, as they were putting their shoes on, "what if there was a volcano under the ground here, under our school?" "Better put your wellies on and look where you're going," said Katie. "Ooh," said Lucy.
Pat was waiting at the gate for Julian. "Time to go home," said Pat. The next morning it seemed very quiet in the village when Pat was on his way to collect the letters. When he arrived at the post office, Mrs. Goggins was talking to someone on the telephone.
"Oh, yes. Yes, I certainly will. Don't you worry now. It'll be all right. I feel sure of that. Did you say it was near Thompson Ground? Oh, dearie me, what next? Yes, I'll tell him. I'll tell him to be really careful. Bye for now."
"What was all that about, Mrs. Goggins? What have I got to be so careful about?" said Pat.
"Oh, dear, well, that was P.C. Selby," said Mrs. Goggins. "He's in ever such a confaddle. It seems that there's a great gaping hole in the middle of the road near Thompson Ground, and he doesn't want anyone falling down it. He says it's big enough to swallow a cow."
"Oh, I know what that means," said Pat. "Road closed. Diversion. Cones and bollards and bits of plastic tape all over the place. How does he think I'm going to get through with all these letters and parcels?"
"Oh, what a business it is," said Mrs. Goggins.
"It must be these volcanoes wakening up again," said Pat. "Julian was on about it last night. They've been doing it at school. Volcanoes and earthquakes and such like. That's how Greendale was made in the first place."
"Nay, Pat, it's only a hole in the road. Don't get carried away," said Mrs. Goggins.
"Well, I can't post all these letters in a hole in the road, can I? Never mind, the post always gets through somehow. Cheerio." Pat was still muttering to himself as he loaded up his van. What if a dinosaur came galloping out of that hole? You never know what might happen. I wonder if dinosaurs get letters. Now then, Jess, what did dinosaur cats look like? I bet they ate some huge fish. Alf was out on his tractor. Pat stopped for a chat. What do you reckon to this hole in the road, Alf?
What hole?
Said Alf.
I've seen nothing. I've been ploughing this field since early on.
There's a great hole just outside your house. PC Selby shut the road off. There are notices all over. No road, keep out, danger.
Oh dear,
said Alf.
how am I going to get home? I'd best be off.
There was a parcel for Greendale Farm. Hello? Is there anybody in?
Hello, Pat, said Mrs. Pottage. Oh, a lovely parcel.
Come and see our pictures,
said Katie.
they're for our volcano project.
Volcanoes? Said Pat. You don't think it's a volcano making that great hole in the road, do you?
Oh, Pat, I don't think it can be as bad as all that, said Mrs. Pottage.
I hope not, said Pat. Cheerio, and mind how you go. Pat kept a careful lookout just in case there were any new holes that no one knew about. When he came to the crossroads, he had to stop. There was a huge sign with one word on it, diversion, blocking the road ahead. Oh dear, said Pat, we can't go that way. There was a blue arrow showing the new route, and Pat had to follow it. Now, Jess, where are we going to get to? I know Selby and his diversions. Last time I went this way... Hang on. I think we're lost. There was another diversion sign blocking the road, with more blue arrows. Not another. But these arrows are pointing back the other way. Pat drove down a winding road. There was only just enough room for his van to squeeze between the hedges. Then he came to yet another diversion. What's this? The man must be mad, said Pat. Oh, no. We are lost now. I think we're in Timbuktu. Jess wondered if there were any mice in Timbuktu. I wonder if we turn right here, said Pat. But it was no good. It only led to another diversion sign. Then Pat rubbed his eyes. I've just spotted where we are, Jess. We're back where we started. Then Alf came chugging along on his tractor. Don't follow me, said Pat. I'm lost. If you follow these signs, you just go round in a great big circle.
Nay, Pat, I can't be bothered with all that,
said Alf.
I have to get home and get my dinner. Let's shift this clutter out of the way.
Alf dumped the diversion sign in the hedge.
There you are. No problem,
said Alf, and he drove off down the road. Pat followed not far behind. Near to Thompson Ground, there were red cones and plastic tapes, flashing lights, and notices all over the road. In the middle of all this, there was a small hole.
Is that what all this fuss has been about?
Said Alf.
It doesn't look much to me.
It must be a mini volcano, said Pat.
A baby one,
Said Alf.
I reckon Ted could fill that in, no bother. Look out, here comes trouble.
P.C. Selby was coming towards them with a cup of tea in one hand.
Now then, what's going on here?
He said in his special policeman's voice.
Come on, lads, you know this road's closed. You must have seen the signs. It's my duty to warn you, and I'll have to take your names and addresses.
Don't be daft, Arthur, said Pat. You've known us ever since we were in short trousers.
Never mind that,
said P.C. Selby.
We have to do it proper. Can you just hold my tea? Now then, how do you spell proceeding? What's that, T? You haven't got a pencil sharpener on you by any chance? Come here, let's have a sup before it goes cold.
Now Dorothy came out with a pot of tea and cups and saucers on a tray.
Here we are, a nice fresh cup of tea and a top-up for Arthur. That'll buck everybody up.
Oh, thanks, Dorothy, said Pat. Just what we need. 2 sugars, Arthur.
And 3 for me,
said Alf.
Dorothy, have you got anything to sharpen Arthur's pencil? I'll hold your tea. Hang on. Pat, if you could just hold this, and then, Arthur, pass your pencil to Dorothy, then if you can hold this...
They didn't seem to have enough hands to hold all the cups of tea and the pencil and the notebook and the pencil sharpener. They juggled all these things between them.
Oops,
said Alf.
Look out, you're slopping me tea.
I think there are 2 E's in proceeding, said Pat. But is it a C or an S? What's that, T?
Has anyone seen my notebook?
Said P.C. Selby. I think it's going round in circles like my van, said Pat. It's sure to come back to where it started.
Talking about that,
said P.C. Selby.
You've given me an idea. Now then, if we made all the traffic go through Alf's yard instead...
Pat gave Dorothy her letters and left them to discuss the new plan. He still had a lot of letters to deliver. When he called on Miss Hubbard, she was acting very oddly, prodding about the garden with her stick.
"Oh, morning, Pat," she said.
Morning, Miss Hubbard. You've not lost that ring again, have you?
"Certainly not. I'm just taking precautions. Holes, you know, appearing without warning. You never know what's going on these days. P.C. Selby told me all about it. Volcanoes, earthquakes. It's these newfangled things doing it all. These objects whizzing about in the sky. Flying saucers, who can tell?"
Oh, I wouldn't let it bother you, Miss Hubbard, said Pat. Just get your taters in, the way you always did, and nothing much'll go wrong. Cheerio. Pat called on Ted Glynn. There was a parcel for him. Sorry I'm a bit late today, said Pat. It's this hole in the road. I've had to go all round Greendale to get here.
Don't worry, said Ted. Leave it to me. I'll have that hole filled in no time. A bag of sand and cement, and plenty of gravel and tar. That'll sort it out. All that lot was left over from fettling that old house in Pencaster. I knew it would come in handy one day.
Champion, said Pat. Pat was on his way, George Lancaster was busy sorting his eggs. Morning, George. My goodness, you have a lot of letters today.
It's my birthday,
said George, smiling. Happy birthday, George, said Pat. You'll find a special one from me and Sarah somewhere among that lot. Cheerio. Pat had delivered all his letters. It was time to go back to the post office to see if any more letters had come in from Pencaster. He stopped at Thompson Ground to see how things were going. There was a whole new set of signs leading into the field and through Alf's yard, where Ted's lorry was parked.
It's like town centre here, said Alf. My poor hens. They're all mizzled, poor things. Don't know which way from t'other. They'll not lay for a fortnight. Here comes another van. Oh, it's Sam.
Sam Waldron drove through in his mobile shop, tooting his horn.
See what I mean, Pat? It's terrible.
You'll be all right, said Pat, as soon as Ted gets that hole filled in. P.C. Selby stood in the middle of the road, directing the traffic.
Come on, slowly as you go. Careful now. Watch these ends.
Tea up
called Dorothy from the kitchen door.
and fresh biscuits straight from the oven.
Just what I need, said Ted. We'll have a sup while that tar sets. Are you coming for your tea, Arthur?
Something seemed to be keeping P.C. Selby.
Help!
Did somebody shout help? Said Pat.
He's not still looking for his notebook, is he?
Said Alf.
We'd better go and see what's up, said Ted.
There was P.C. Selby in the middle of the road, stuck fast. Ted looked closely at his big police boots.
What are you doing to my nice new tar? Said Ted. Fast-setting stuff, that. A new kind, you know. I've brought you a nice cup of tea, said Alf, till we can get you unstuck.
You'll have to take your boots off and leave them in charge, said Pat. It's a good thing there isn't a volcano under there. So P.C. Selby loosened his boots, and Alf brought a wheelbarrow to wheel him to the house.
Time for a bit of farm transport,
said Alf. We'll need a new warning sign, said Pat. He found a big piece of card in his van and wrote on it with his felt pen. Danger, police boots. There. Everybody should see that, said Pat. And that's quite enough of volcanoes for one day. I hope Dorothy's kept that tea hot.
Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat and his black and white cat. All the birds are singing and the day is just beginning. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Pat feels he's a really happy